star of Maestro, it's Carey Mulligan.
As I said to you, Carey, from the second I saw it, I'm going to say it again and again and again. She's outrageous in this film. So, thank you all. This is so exciting to stay. This is awesome. I love being in the Aero Theater. And
I had been sort of wincing when I talked about the process because I felt like it needed to be a sort of all-in, almost method thing. I always thought, like, oh, I can't do that. That's, I'm not that kind of actor. I'm sort of show up and, that kind of actor. Not, I wouldn't keep my dialect in between, take stuff like that. I was just like, ooh, I'm allergic to that. I don't, and I think because it is really terrifying, it's just scary to I always thought it was ballsy as hell when people did it, but I always felt like I'm not brave enough to do that. I can't, And so anyway, the whole thing was essentially Marcus was making this very artistic, brilliant piece of work that would live on. And I was, and I sort of thought, that's the kind of art I want to make. I want to make something that lives on, but I also felt like it was just such a leap, And anyway, so Kim said, well, what would happen if you actually just didn't worry about the leap and you just made the leap and tried and really did all the stuff that you found really hard and nerve-wracking up until now, and you just thought, fuck it, just this is it now. And so I did, and so that sort of meant doing all of the stuff that I just sort of freaked out about before, and I loved it, and I never stopped talking like Felicia, and I was, and I found it really hard to stop, and I became obsessed with her life and everything about her, and I went and met her family in Chile, and I learned how to paint, even though I never painted a film. All of these things about her, because I just became completely, the more I knew about her, the more I wanted to put into the film about her. And it became suddenly, the way of working with Bradley, suddenly, well, why have I not been doing this for 15, 20 years? And so it felt like, it was the first time I was like, oh, I'm an artist, I make art. I don't just make things, I make art.
How important was Bradley Cooper in that process for you? And just talk a little bit about how you guys came to believe.
Completely. It was like his level of commitment to what he does, is just beyond anything I've ever seen. It's so inspiring, and you can't help but be sort of. I think you can help, but you don't want to be out of the process. You want to be in it with him because he just makes it look so much fun. That's the thing. In the midst of being someone who, he's up at 2 in the morning to go get his makeup done, so that he can be on set by the time the crew are there to set up. There's never a sense. Meryl Streep my friend Meryl. I was about to say Meryl, and I was like, hang on, gay girl. Meryl last night described his performance as an explosion of joy. And I wanted to she was talking about him, and I wanted to film it for Bradley and send it to him. But she's right, but that's how he was as a filmmaker as well. So that was him as a director as well as Lenny. So it was like this incredibly free, wonderful set, but at the same time just joy. He was the happiest guy just getting to make this film. He was so delighted every day with the whole thing, with everyone, and with the whole process. And that was just so infectious.
I want to talk about a couple of scenes, take you through a couple of them. Obviously, there's a few standouts in this film. The first one for me is when it's black and white, because both of you age, like you go through 4 decades here in this film, right? You're young and I just love the energy and the body language. Both of you are magnificent the way you go through the decades of life together. But can you talk about doing that in black and white and being young Felicia, and specifically that dance sequence, which is on the town, I think it's called fancy feet.
That's free.
Fancy feet, right, thank you. What was it like to shoot and to prep that? Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, the young stuff, it was interesting. I was a lot more comfortable being old. It was weird. I found the sort of, it was the first thing we shot. We shot all of the black and white falling in love stuff first. Then we went right to the end, straight away, to the scene in the Central Park after she's been diagnosed with cancer. So we shot everything up in Tanglewood, and then we went to that. And I found it very stressful in the morning, the makeup tray with like 17 different sort of masks on my face and like things rolling myself and, you know, trying to do all the tricks and sticking my face in the fridge. But I loved all of the falling in love stuff. It was just so effortless and fun. It felt like there was just the two of us up there, and Brian Klugman was just like play, and the crew seemed very small even though they were really big. Like he just made the most incredibly comfortable set straight away, so it was so easy. But the on the town fancy free stuff was like if you told 12-year-old me that I would have got to be a part of something like that, it was just my dream when I was little was to be in musical theatre. That's what I wanted to do above anything else. And I quickly realised by the time I was about 14 that I couldn't sing well enough or dance at all. And so it kind of got knocked on the head. But doing that with the ballet and when I got picked up by one of the dancers, first time he picked me up in rehearsals, I was like, too heavy, you can't. But it was just the coolest thing, and I just wanted to do it over and over again. And I kind of luxuriated. I had very little to do except sort of experience it and to be surrounded by these incredible dancers. And Bradley's whole vision of it was just extraordinary.
Yeah, I love the way the film is like very linear to that point, and then it takes you into this other surreal world, and it fits so beautifully. You see these characters really come to life, you see who they are within this dance, and it's just so beautiful.
And part of that storytelling is, that's their whole relationship summed up in that dance. And Dick Hart, who was the famous actor that came into the dressing room when she was on stage, she was with for about 4 years, Felicia, and he passed away. He was an alcoholic, and he passed away from liver disease or something. That might not be quite right, but and she was sort of devastated. And he comes up later in that fight in Thanksgiving, that Lenny was waiting outside the hospital when he passed away. But it was just Bradley and Josh's idea of to bring the whole story into this one dance sequence right at the top of the film that tells you everything, and then you see the rest.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I would say anybody that you should watch the film again, because then you really appreciate it. The first time I didn't quite get it, I was a little dense, I have to admit, and
no, but it's
I just loved it, and then the second time I was like, oh my god, I saw exactly what he was doing and what the two of you were doing. It's incredible. This performance and that release.
Well, that was the great thing about, so much of the film was out of order. We started younger than we jumped to the end, and we did that throughout. But the last thing we shot in the first, we had 2 sections of filming. We did the majority of the film in New York, on location in Tanglewood and Fairfield, and then on the soundstage. And then we had about 2 weeks, 4 months later in London, and Ely Cathedral. But the majority of it was that first bit, and that was the last thing we shot in that section. So we had done almost their entire story, and Thanksgiving was the final scene. And we wrapped that. So we were, and that scene, Bradley, I think it was one of the first things that he wrote in 2018, and he texted it to me. And I was putting my children to bed. It was like, because he was in New York and I was in England, and I remember reading it, and it hardly changed from then, from 2018. So it was words that I had read over and over and over and over and over, and read with him and Josh when we read the script together, and we'd even filmed it at one point. We'd rehearsed it. We had used it to practice our dialect with Tim Monick. So the words were like so completely embedded, and And when he said he just wanted to shoot it in a big wide, I was delighted. Because it's the dream, but you don't have to, the camera's really far away, you don't have to think about it, and you just get to play. It's like, it was like theatre. And so I was thrilled, and we did it. He set it up, and I think it was literally, the camera was locked off, so it was, the camera operator was sort of there, but I don't think there was anyone really, felt like there was no one else in the room. It was a 360 set. Kevin Thompson recreated the Dakota apartment perfectly, and we did 3 takes, and that was the 3rd take, and then we wrapped it. It was like 2 in the afternoon. Then it was the best. But it was just incredible writing. It's like such a gift.
All right, let's talk about one of my favorite scenes, and can we just talk about like what is she feeling in that moment?
Yeah, I love that. They were wacky, they were as a family. That was one of the things I love to learn about. And they did spontaneous fun, but this wasn't that. But this was a twist on that for her, I think. This was based, I think, on an interview of these incredible tapes that were very useful to us. John Gruen wrote a book in '67 called The Private World of Leonard Bernstein, and he interviewed Felicia and Lenny and his secretary and various people in his life, and she talked about, and there's a part of it that's in the film where Sarah Silverman's character, she says, there's a price for being in my brother's orbit, you know that. And Felicia says, yes, of course, but she essentially talks about sort of, I will do that, I chose it and I choose to do it, and I do it completely or not at all, and I won't sort of, essentially she was always clear that she never wanted to be a martyr in this, that she wouldn't do it to the point of where it was visible that she was suffering. She would suffer, but it wouldn't be visible, and if it was visible, then she would disappear. So that was, she wanted to do it. She said, I'd either do it completely or not at all, and then she says, I don't want to. If you do it where you can't even see that it's costing you, then it's like cheating. She said, I don't want to do it that way. I find it disgusting. I find it the worst sort of cheating. I either do it completely or not at all, and that is the way I want it. So the action was essentially that. It was like, right, she can't stomach it anymore. She can't function anymore with the way that her life is going, and so she absents herself, and it's the most sort of physical way that she can just completely remove herself. And I also think the performer in her, like the one part is like me, just for that this is someone who's had a burning ambition to be an actor, to be on stage, and that hasn't gone away completely, and that this continual focus pull that he has to everyone in his life is just so suffocating and exhausting, where she just goes, fuck it, I'm gone. And such a nerdy thing, but she famously played Joan of Arc and was notably, critically acclaimed in it, and there's an amazing photograph of her in her home, which we shot in Fairfield, Connecticut, as Joan. And she's sort of looking to the heavens, and Joan became a kind of, it's mentioned in the party scene, Mendy says, you're like our little Joan of Arc, or Cynthia says you're a little Joan of Arc, and she says, and so when I went into the pool, we did one take, but as I jumped into the pool, you can't see it because it's so wide, but there is a photo. I'm doing the Joan sort of martyr thing, but yeah, it's not fun. But you can see it if you like studied it.
And one take.
Well, you don't want to do that more than once.
Right. You talk about obviously the an education was based
on someone, and the dig was also, that was real. But this was the first time, with real, with living relatives. Jamie Alexander and Nina Bernstein, who were just the most incredible people, were so deeply involved in every part of the film. So it definitely felt, I was playing their mother. The responsibility was so enormous, and they just couldn't have been more lovely and generous and welcoming, and to the point where we did shoot in their house. That's where they just spent Thanksgiving, and it's very much as it was, really.
You really transformed. For you, other than the work you did before and workshopping with Bradley and kind of going all in, what was the one thing that really made you become Felicia for you? Was it the hair, or the wardrobe, or is there one particular tick?
I think it was her voice, because I had such a long time to. It was funny. Someone the other day was like, "Oh, your voice in Maestro, you're English." I was like, "No, I'm English." I didn't know why I was like, "What?" I don't know what I did wrong, but but it was not English. She's not English at all. But her dialect was so specific, but it was also just so enchanting. I just loved the way she spoke, and it was so wry and witty and cool, but very, very of a time. But it was so important to Bradley and to me, obviously, but from the beginning, that this not feel like something like a period drama where you're removed. Like, it needed to feel like these were. It didn't feel a period to me at all, actually. None of the film ever felt period. It didn't feel like that. And I didn't want her voice to sound like that. And so the voice was probably the biggest, longest amount of time spent. And having these tapes to listen to, just walking around, whenever it became, instead of podcasts and the radio and music, it became just what I would put on when I was, loading the dishwasher or going on a school run. Like, I would just listen to her voice, but could do that for like 4 years. So it was like she was that soaking in, and when I finally could do that, I could improvise as her in her voice. Then I was set, because that was, I think, the facility we needed with their dialects to be able to do the film.
All right, Lenny.
The first day I walked on set was one of the last things in the film is when he's teaching William. That was the first thing he shot in the entire film, was him as old Lenny teaching William. And I wasn't even shooting that day, I just came in to sort of say hello. And I walked on set and saw him doing that, and I was like, oh shit. Okay, this is what we're doing. Like, this is really, I was so unbelievably impressed. Not impressed is even the word, it was just like, what? I don't know how he does it, but he was old Lenny, sort of, directing the crew as old Lenny, and it was man. And I loved it. I had no idea what it would be like, really, but I would arrive on set and he would just be Lenny, and I didn't have to act, really. It was amazing. And he was like that with everyone, and with all the new actors that came in. And it wasn't like a weird thing where no one had to call him Lenny if they didn't want to. I mean, everyone did, because it was fun, but, there was no, and it was just very kind of, it was fun, like the crew, everyone was having a fun time. And he was having a ball, like I said, like with anyone, he was having the best time. But it was also, he made the crew feel like a part of the company. So there was no line between, so we would shoot things, if you can't see Bradley Lenny's mouth, he may well be directing. Like when we're hugging, when I get the cancer diagnosis, he's talking to Mango, the dolly grip, to bring the camera in closer. And I'm like crying on his shoulder and he's going, Mango, come in, Mango. But it didn't take me out of it at all, because it felt like Lenny's trying to tell the story better. It was the weirdest thing. You would think it would be, but it didn't. It just made it more cohesive and easier. I don't know how his brain works. I mean, it's like, I just don't know how he. One example is the Thanksgiving Day fight scene. We shot it. That was the third take and the only take where I stood up and walked towards him. The other 2 takes I didn't. And so I walked towards him. I cleared that window, which was a green screen. And then he takes this long pause at the end, and there's no one outside. Those lines were put in later, but so he's in his head going, okay, now the kids are going to call. Then the big puppet thing, whatever it's not puppet, yeah, thing comes past, and then he waits for the exact moment, and then he talks, and like, what? You knew that in the moment? Like, I don't know how his brain works. But stuff like that would happen constantly, where he would just be thinking through things. He would play the whole film in his head, and then make a decision. It was just remarkable. And also, the most fun I've ever had acting with an actor ever. Just the best actor.
So you said it was like a little village, like this little tiny project.
Yeah, it was crazy. I saw it at the premiere. I mean, I'd seen cuts a while ago, and then I didn't see anything. And obviously the strike, we didn't go to anything. And my family had seen it. You know, they went to the London Film Festival, they saw it, and yeah, I cried. It was weird. I mean, I cried at a certain I cried at Ely when Lenny conducts the Marla. That wrecked me. I just keep saying, I said to him a million times, but I keep on saying I can't believe I'm in it. You know, it's just I just think it's an incredible piece of work from Bradley, and I think he's extraordinary in it, and it's the kind of part that you just think, I've played parts like that on stage, but it's next level in terms of the writing, and so I was blown away by what his achievement.
All right, well, let's talk about another role that you had in education. So,
It wasn't at all. It was a different director. She left, and then the whole process took over sort of 18 months, I think, from the first time I read it and auditioned for it. It was called something like The Best Day of Her Life originally, or The Best Day. It was like very bad. And at one point, I auditioned for Roz's part. Again, it was a whole thing, and then when we shot it, it was 5 weeks. It was, so I think it was not. I was delighted. I'd never been, the lead part of anything. That was extremely exciting. And the actors that got involved, Alfred Molina and Olivia Williams, and it was amazing actors. I was over the moon, but I was not. Thought it was a really exciting, cool, very small indie film. I had no expectations for it at all, and I absolutely loved it. Peter Sarsgaard. We then went on and did The Seagull together in New York. Not long after that, and we just had the best time. I loved acting with him so much. But the expectations were just not of anything that it would be seen even in America, I think. I was very shocked by it. Delighted. But the first time I saw it, I remember calling up my publicist, Jess, who's here, and I was like, I called my mum first, and then I called my mum and I said, it's so boring. And this is not a great endorsement if you haven't seen it, but I called mum and I was like, it's so boring, and my face is terrible, and I do nothing, and my face just looks so bland, and I had a massive meltdown, and I had nightmares that I was going to get kicked out of Sundance. And I met who's been my publicist for 18 years, but we sat down and I was in tears saying it's terrible, because I hadn't seen my face that long on screen before. I'd been a bit part in everything so much that I thought it was just really dull. Needless to say, I was surprised but obviously, objectively, Lone Sheffield's an incredibly talented filmmaker. It was a beautiful film, everyone was amazing in it, but I didn't enjoy myself, nor should I think you should.
And then you went on to get nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
How did that feel? How did you handle that after all of the, going to this tiny movie to oh my God, I hate myself on screen too. I'm part of something now that's a machine that's just giant. Shot out of a cannon, really. I remember.
Yeah, it was. It did feel like that. And you were so nice to me. Do you know what? I just didn't have enough fun, and I wish I had. And I think I was freaked out by all of it, and kept on feeling this feels I shouldn't probably be, it's Meryl Streep over there, and just felt very kind of. And if I could go back, I'd say have a great. This is have fun. But I didn't. I just was very serious and found it all very scary, and didn't like having my photo taken because I had braces when I was little and had learned not to smile, to cover one arm for my pictures, which is not good. And so generally just had a terrible time. But did meet wonderful people, and and it was you know, but yeah, I wish I'd had a better time.
All right, well, before I let you go, I'm gonna end as we started. You're an artist. You said you wanted something like your husband out there in the world to live forever. This film is going to live forever. Felicia is going to live forever. What have you taken away yourself, Carey, the artist, from the experience of being in Maestro?
Well, I mean, so much. It's been, you know, and it has been a sort of, will be now 5 years of us working together, and I think, you know, when I first met Bradley, I was doing a one-woman show for this job, and we met years ago. When he asked me to play Felicia, I was doing a play called Girls and Boys off Broadway in New York, and it was this 90-minute monologue, and it was terrifying to do, but once I'd gotten through the terror of doing it, I absolutely loved it, and I was having a great time. But I had found this poem years ago when I was doing theatre, and the last 3 lines of which I always write stuff on my mirror to sort of like glance at before I go on stage, and it always would apply to theatre for me, if like, just walk on and just start talking, and then, you know, it'll all feel great in a minute. But it's this poem by Carey Mulligan, and the last 3 lines say, "These are our days, walk them, fear nothing." And I always like became my sort of mantra for theatre, these are our days, walk them. And I feel like, you know, we've got such an incredible opportunity with these people's lives, you know, to tell the story of someone's life. It's just such an extraordinary privilege. And, you know, those were their days, and we are honouring them, but also by doing that, we're making our own mark, I think, you know, attempting to, and I think that really matters. And again, something I wouldn't have said a couple of years ago, but I think art matters, and making things that people connect to matters. And that feels very freeing to be able to say that I made it. So I'll take that away, for sure. And so much love for all the people who made it possible.
Well, thank you so much, Carey.